Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
It's the number 300. We've finally arrived. 300 episodes. Steve, congratulations. We've cracked 3 tons there.
Thanks, Ben. It's exciting and it's amazing. Never would have actually thought we would have got here, but we did, I guess.
That's what happens. We'll get into like YouTuber stress and quitting in a moment, but we designed this whole thing so that we obviously would keep an even keel on things and not stress out too much.
That's it. It's all about longevity.
Exactly. But before we get to that, there's two topics that we're going to bundle together about the space program, really. And at the moment, we've got we've talked before about this sort of transition to private corporations kind of going into space. But there's a renewed interest in governments now actually going into space, and the latest story being Japan's Moon Sniper robotic explorer landing on the lunar surface, but they encountered a bit of an issue with not being powered, and they're having to the solar cell on it is not generating electricity basically, so they're going to have to look at what they're doing there to see if it can keep going. But it makes it interesting that it's like echoes of the 20th century anyway, because there's kind of a sense that not that a Cold War is restarting, but there's definitely some competition going on, and a sense that governments need to be more invested in going back to the moon, because they might have to start thinking about what happens if more of us are there, and as soon as humans get involved in the equation, they're going to draw up fences and rights and all this sort of stuff. So it's interesting that it's a good thing that they're going back, but at the same time it's like there's a bit of a caveat on top of it in terms of the implications.
Yeah, well, it's the 21st century space race, isn't it? After deciding that no one wanted to go to the moon for 50 years, now everyone wants to go. I think the most amazing thing is what the Japanese landing on the moon just reminds us all is that it ain't easy. And how amazing was it then that they could do it in 1969? I mean, but I guess that was all manual. So obviously the Japanese land are heavily automated. And as I understand it, the way it's landed, its panels are aligned to where the sun currently is in the moon's horizon. This will probably change over the next month. So if that might mean then that the lander will power up. But as I understand it anyway, it's already completed, over 95% of the mission just in getting down there. So very exciting. Yeah, who knows what will happen? Maybe it'll be like Antarctica, where once somebody shows up, everyone has to show up and claim their little piece of territory up on the moon. Not that there's going to be any sovereignty or nations or anything there, but I'm sure you'll be able to have your own patch with a lovely view of outer space.
Absolutely. And just to dovetail nicely into this, I've been watching the show For All Mankind. I've actually finally caught up with it. It did start 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm almost at the end of season 4, which is the current season. Apparently there's a couple of more seasons coming out, and I think it's a nice sort of symbiotic, not symbiotic, but a connection to that particular story, because For All Mankind, obviously strongly encourage everyone to watch it, because it's a show that really honors the space program, and these types of things, like this exact scenario is something you'd probably see in the show, for instance, and how it works. But obviously there's, because the concept of it is like an alternative history, the Soviets get to the moon first, and this leads to a situation where the space race never ends. So, by the 2000s, they're already going to Mars and all that sort of stuff because of competition and whatnot. So, and it's an interesting thing to watch. But the show itself, and this is the reason why I like it, is that it actually puts in historical events that we are aware of, but puts it through a different filter, through a different character or a different historical character or whatever. and the same event occurs, and it does like little tricky things like that. So in addition to being like a really good sort of space program show that highlights what NASA did and what all of the all countries have done to contribute to the space program, it also has this kind of strong historical connection that would then make you want to actually go back and have a look at the history, which is quite interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where, these sort of alternate historical perspectives, or in fact futuristic perspectives, can be really, really interesting, because they test our understanding of what happened and what could have been if things were so different. I mean, the Viking missions to Mars in 1976 purely came out of the moon program. But the reason that nothing was really continued past that is because without the competition in the Cold War, there wasn't seen to be any reason or any imperative on the American side, and these things fall away. Of course, if we're going to talk about films that might really put people in the picture, I still think First Man with Ryan Gosling is an incredible film, and that would at least set the scene for all of mankind and imagining what might happen after. Because the feat of engineering to get there in '69 is unbelievable, and the fact that a man could land on the moon better than a computer today, well, that says a lot too. Absolutely.
So encourage you all to go and watch those. Highly recommended. All right, so we alluded this to the beginning, and we've got to talk about it. People talking about quitting YouTube. That's what we're going to talk about now. I love little rabbit holes like that. This sort of trend of YouTubers that have been around for about 12, 15 years, and I think they've just kind of had it, and they're broadcasting it to people, and I just find it interesting that it's become a trend. So, maybe one did it, and then all of a sudden there's like 20 that have done it. We're not quitting YouTube, but we're not actually sort of all in that respect. We're doing a podcast, and it just happens to have a video attached, so why not chuck it up on YouTube? So... and I kind of understand where it's going. Obviously, we watched I picked out two videos. One from Marques Brownlee, is probably the top tech YouTuber. Another one's Shelby Churchill. I have no idea who she was, but the algorithm suggested her to me. Given this was about the topic, I have no idea what she does, but I probably should have a look. But I thought both of them actually summarized it all, pretty succinctly. So, go check out their videos on it. But what I wanted to sort of touch on was they're broadcasting something that, could potentially happen in so many other professions. It's just that doesn't actually come up. You don't actually hear about it because, people are either quiet or they keep it to themselves. Or if you think of like, maybe an analogy of a professional athlete, which is something Marques kind of referred to, they kind of get to a certain age and they're done. But whereas, they're not going to produce a 20-minute video about how they were traumatized by the whole thing, and that they need to find themselves again, etc. And none of not that I want to be too harsh on them or anything, but it's not I totally understand where they might be coming from if they're completely wrapped up in YouTube world and that's all they do and think about. And I can understand that if you want to get to the top, you probably might have to do that, especially now. It might be a bit too much, and you've got to wake up and smell the roses, so to speak, if you actually want to stay sane, kind of thing. But I just it's like everything that happens in social media these days. It's like one does it, then it becomes a trend, and then everyone does it, and I don't know. I don't think I would be. I don't think I'd even feel comfortable necessarily. Doing something like that. I would probably just pull the plug, but that's just me.
Well, that's right, Ben. And these guys are YouTubers that devote their lives 24/7 to what they're doing. And exactly what you said, it's long, it's hard, it's tiring, but then, hey, I've got an idea for some new content. I'm going to quit. And then I need a story about why I'm going to quit. And then that becomes a trend. And everyone says, well, actually, I am sick of this YouTube thing. I've made my money. I'm retiring. That's it. But, no one questions an athlete when they retire. They go, oh, yeah, obviously their body's given out. And even the person in their 60s who retires, nobody goes, well, they don't make statements saying, oh, I've given everything I can to work, I'm cooked now. They just go. So I think what we're seeing here is something that's very natural, but it's also caught up in the whole, I guess, sphere of content creation. Because for those YouTubers who are retiring, and let's give them credit, they make their life 24/7, and they're there. And, this is just an extension of their lives. So emotionally, if it's time to go, they're going to share it with us. It's more content. It just keeps the wheels turning for a little bit more until they finally just hit the off button.
Absolutely. I guess maybe to be fair, this is a new job / career, if you want to call it that. It didn't by and large exist prior to, even like YouTube, I think really started to kick off in 2006, I think. But it didn't really become the YouTube we know it today until several years later. And all of these people would have, started in their teens, potentially, and they wouldn't have known anything else, and they struck gold with, getting in first and getting the views, etc. And even the ones that are coming through today, like they're starting very young, and then they I can imagine there'd be a scenario where they just wouldn't know anything else. And from that perspective, I can understand why they, would have this kind of a reaction, because it's almost like getting sucked into the vortex, and they haven't seen anything else.
Well, that's it. It certainly doesn't stop, not when you're a top YouTuber, and I think that's, as we were saying before the show, that's how we get to 300, very slowly, one step at a time, and not probably creating our whole lives around this. And that's the big difference. They make it to the top because of their commitment to what they're doing, and their content and their audiences. And that's something that should be respected. That they're certainly rewarded, I think, well for what they do. And as far as I'm concerned, if they want to call it quits after 10 or 15 years, why not? They've done the hard yards.
One thing I did want to touch on was, I think it was in the Shelby Church video, she touched on this whole thing about the algorithm and how it can, in effect, turn on you in a way. You're not necessarily guaranteed that if you put up a video that you're automatically going to get 1 million views because your last 100 got 1 million views. And I can imagine that if that was starting to become a point of, a question around a revenue stream, particularly if you're a YouTuber who's set up a studio, you've employed a few people, and you're relying on income to come in a fairly predictable manner. It's not really a platform that lends itself to that. And then she was talking about, going onto other platforms as well to, sort of spread the risk around so that, if one underperforms, then, another one can sort of pick it up. But I can imagine that there would be a level of uncertainty there that might be extremely uncomfortable and could play on your mental health, really, about how that would work, because you might not know week to week whether or not you can keep going.
Oh, totally agree. I mean, we're not talking about ordinary people doing this as a hobby. We're talking about businesses, and a business where you're all of the business. Your face, your likeness, the content you create, everything is it all comes from you. You're putting it together. You're investing large sums of money to maintain your position in the market. And so, yeah, exactly. I'm sure there can be some very stressful times. And of course, the thing about the socials generally is we only see the winners. No one who loses gets pushed to the top. If you crash and burn, you'll just be buried by the algorithm and no one will even know what happened to you. So I guess if there's an upside to this, at least these guys are on top and saying, see you later, I'm done.
Absolutely. And I guess the final point I wanted to make on this is that, and this is like time immemorial concept really, but, we all have dreams, I guess, of potentially, well, I guess a lot of us would, about what we might want to do with our lives, what would the nature of our dream career would be, etc. And I think there's like an assumption that, you're going to do what you love, so it's not going to feel like work. But the reality is that that dream career is going to turn into a dream job if it actually takes off. And a job is a job. So there's going to be components of it that once you become successful are going to be things you don't want to deal with, that are going to start distracting you from the reasons you got into it in the first place. And if you're not ready for that, and if you're not willing to deal with that, that's when you're going to start having problems and realize that, maybe the whole, societal rhetoric around that kind of thing is misleading.
Exactly. But once again, as I say, that's what happens to you when it comes back and it's all about you. And that's one of the few things, or one of the unique things about being a YouTuber or a typical YouTuber, is that it is all about you. You're the face of the business. Any other business will tell you not to make a business around yourself, because if anything happens to you or you've had enough, you can't go because you are the business. And that's what's happened to these YouTubers. And, of course, they're really at the forefront of the social revolution. They've been there from the evolution of it right through. So, if they're the first wave and they're checking out now, as we say, I mean, that's perfectly understandable. But, they probably wouldn't have realised where fronting their own videos and being their own brand would take them. So, I think there's a lesson in that for everyone who wants to be a YouTuber in the future, that, if there's a way, to produce that content that doesn't rely on your likeness and image and your brand, your own personal brand to sell, that's probably the way to get the longevity, if that's the sort of field that you really love.
And I guess we'll just have to wait and see whether these people that are quitting are actually quitting, or if they come back 12 months later feeling refreshed and ready to go again.
To be honest, I don't think it's much different to the music industry. They'll come back with solo albums 6 months later.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. And just one final shout out again for All Mankind and your recommendation there, Steve, of First Man. Gotta love shows that do the space program justice. So you got to get out there and watch them, or watch them at home, obviously, if in the case of For All Mankind, given that it's a streamer. Although First Man, I think, is on a streamer as well, I think.
So. Oh, it is now, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely, I think I'll just have to boot it up before I get editing this afternoon. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's episode 300. Hopefully we'll get another 300 more. And that's it for this episode, and we'll catch you next time.